finish the tune later. Hey, I'm Burger Bob / Aiden, whatever you want to call me. And I know the lighting in here sucks because the light is right above me, so if I stand right here, I'm just in shadow. And if I stand back here, it's good, but then my horn hits the wall. Okay, whatever. The lighting sucks, I get it. I don't have any extra lights. Someday I'll get some of those. Today I'm going to talk about, look, another Bach. I have a Bach. It's another Bach. I have so many Bachs. This is not mine. Don't worry, I haven't bought this yet. This is a 90s, I assume, 42T. It's got a Thayer valve. But it is not a stock 42 that came from the factory with a Thayer valve. This I'm borrowing from my section mate in the symphony I just won a job in. Yes, I did. Don't worry, it's not a major symphony. I'm not made the big leagues yet. This is his horn. He usually plays an 88H. This is his backup. And I'm borrowing it to see if I want to buy it or if one of my friends wants to buy it. And it's really good. It's a good instrument. This came, according to my section mate, as a straight 42. So just a slide with a straight bell section, no valve. That's called the Bach 42. No number. No letter after the number, just a 42. And someone had it converted to a 42T later by adding this Orla Ed Thayer valve. So just a quick backstory on the Thayer company. Orla Ed Thayer is the guy who invented the Thayer. I think he started making the stainless steel Thayer like I have on my bass. On two of my basses, one of them is now gone. He started making those in like the very late 80s, and then like the company like split off, and then there were two companies with almost the same name making almost the same valve. And I think this is the other one. Stock Bach 42Ts came with the OE Thayer, I think. This is an Orla Ed Thayer. Yes, so they mean the same thing. They're all Orla Ed Thayer, but this is the other company, I think, and it's just a slightly different. It's the same thing, but it's slightly different. It's a half core instead of a full core like my stainless valves. That has like, you can see the cone shape here. In the stainless valves, the whole cone shape is taken up by another cone on the inside. On these, it's only a half cone, so there's only half of a thing moving, and it's just the part that has the hole in it, the port. So there's a lot less mass going on in these, so they're kind of faster, easier to move. I'm not sure how much of a difference that makes. My stainless Thayers are like the heaviest things, and they move really fast, and they're easy to use, so I don't know. It makes a difference, but I'm not sure what. And this is not stainless steel. This is brass casing, and then the inner part, the core, I'm not sure what it's made out of. I've taken it apart and looked at it, and I don't think it's aluminum like the OE Thayers that are put on stock 42Ts, but I don't know. It's something else. It's not steel. It might be aluminum. This has the bracing that was pretty common to put on at the time, which is to say not edge bracing. Edge bracing, instead of the brace going straight to the bell section, just straight across right here, and then another one right here going to the gooseneck. Instead of that, the F attachment is just braced to this bell brace, and there's like these guys that connect to the bell brace. And that has some advantages. It lets the bell resonate more freely. Right now the bell is connected at the bell braces, and then extra right here to the F attachment. And the reason it's put together like this is just so the F attachment has some structural stability. But you can also do that by connecting to this. Edge bracing is a term come up with maybe by Edwards, maybe by someone else. Edwards are the people who use it now, because they made horns with Thayers like this for a long time with this kind of bracing, and then they went, oh, edge bracing is probably better. So they came out with that, and now they can redo your Edwards to edge bracing, or they all come that way now. Anyway, this doesn't have that. This was put together, I assume, in sometime in the mid-90s. What's next on my list? I have my script right here inside this little cubby. It's pretty handy. I already talked about half core. So there's this kind of myth that's kind of half of a myth that 42s are tanks. They're super heavy. They're like basically a bass trombone, right? And that's kind of half true. The stock 42B is not a super heavy instrument, but it's already heavier than the main competitor, the Con 88H. So you kind of already have this slightly heavier instrument, just because Bach uses heavier materials to make the slide and all the bracing and stuff. And, you know, the bell's maybe a little bit heavier gauge. I don't really think they're that much heavier, but just the build is a little bit different than a con. And then when you put on a Thayer valve, which is a lot more mass, it's just straight up more material, and then you have a big old core inside that moves and stuff. And the tubing is usually not stock Bach tubing, so it's maybe a little heavier. It's got different bracing and stuff. That makes the 42 even a little heavier than it was before. So now instead of just being, you know, slightly heavier than an 88H, now it's a lot heavier than an 88H. So people coming from lighter instruments pick this up and go, whoa, what is this, a bass trombone? And this probably does weigh similarly to, like, you know, a really small single bass trombone. Maybe a 50B, I don't know, 50B is pretty heavy for a single. So people get it in their head already, just when they pick it up, oh, this is really heavy and it's a tank. And that's partially true. When you add mass to an instrument, like a giant old valve right here, it changes how the horn plays, and it does make it respond differently. It's like adding a counterweight. This actually had a counterweight on it, because the straight 42 always comes with one, I think, at least at this time period. And that makes it really a tank. It's like super back balanced, which is okay, but just super heavy, and the slots are just like, boom! It's like hitting an anvil. Like, this is the slot. And it plays a little better without the counterweight, I think. So people have it in their heads that these are tanks, and it's kind of partially true. They're heavy. And the problem is now a lot of horns are this heavy. They may be built really well, and they're, you know, not using heavy materials, but if you put on a valve like this, the horn is going to be heavy. That's just how it is. So the valve obviously makes the horn play differently. How about that low range? How does that play? So the valve, this one in particular, has just like a little hitch. I can't even make it happen. Right there. Hitch. Has a little hitch before it fully actuates. Every once in a while. I'm going to clean it out and make it a little better. That's why I missed the E flat. That's my excuse. Yeah, it happened there too. I don't know if you can hear it that well, because I'm not playing super well, but it's just really easy to play through. This is not a bass trombone. It's not as open as my bass, you know, especially since I'm using a tenor mouthpiece. But it is very open. It's just so easy to play low on, especially compared to like a stock 42. And that's the advantage. It makes all the ranges just more even. Like a 42B can play really, really well, and it can play low really, really well. My 42 that's getting worked on already played low pretty well, but it's not even. When you engage the valve, everything changes, and you kind of have to you know, compensate for that. I talked about that in my tenor low range video. With this, you just don't really have to compensate. I can kind of just let the air fall out. And of course, this is with my Greg Black New York 1.25 and a Lessie mouthpiece, quote unquote, you know, with a pretty big throat, so it's kind of easy to do that on anyway. And so, okay, everything's more even. Is the high range hard now? No, I would say it's not. My teacher, former teacher, because I'm not going to school anymore, plays a 42T, and it's very open. His horn is very, very open. And he likes it that way because it makes the high range easy. I'm going to talk about this in a video later today about balance, and his balance is, he makes the balance here at his chops. And if you have that, the high range is easy. Like these notes, I'm not sure how good they sound, but they're just not hard to play. The notes just kind of come out, and you can just let them come out instead of having to like force them or anything like that. Because the whole range, including the open side, when you get this, the whole range just becomes a little more even. Even the D is actually pretty good. Yeah, I cracked it because I'm bad, but it's still pretty good. Even the E flat, man, that actually slots. The high range on these is pretty darn good. If you have the kind of like right setup and the right face for it. You can understand why some people, they don't have the resistance, they don't have the help from the instrument to play high, and all of a sudden it's really hard. I can understand that. I used to play like that, so I'm not going to judge or anything. I understand how that goes. So, low range, high range, it's all pretty good. It's very even. It's easy to play for me. And it's a good instrument. 42T. So, last of all, video's not over. Why are there not Con 888Ts, you know? Why don't they have 88Hs with Thayer valves? The answer is they did. In the mid, maybe late 90s, Con was like, hey, that's a pretty fancy valve. What happens if we put it on an 88H? And they did. They made a dozen, maybe 2 dozen 88Hs with Thayer valves. I can't remember maybe it's like an 88HV or something. They had a different designation because the 88HT means the 88 with a thin bell. I can't remember what they called it. Anyway, they made a bunch of those, and they're actually really good. The problem is the 42 already kind of needs a new valve because the 42B, 42BO, just not the most balanced, best instruments out there. They can be really good, but the majority of them are not super awesome. Whereas the 88H is already a very balanced, kind of a perfect instrument in its own right. Also, the 42 slide stock is a bass width. It is exactly the same as the 50 slide, except it's 1 bore size smaller, and it even has a bass crook. We'll talk about that later today in another video. And so it's got this wide slide already. You don't have to do anything. The problem with the Thayer is it sticks out, you know, like a good inch to the side of the gooseneck. And if you have a narrower slide like an 88H, all of a sudden this valve is like hitting you in the chin or the jaw, and you can't play. So Con had to make a wider slide for the 88H just for those horns with a Thayer valve. And I think they went, we have to make a completely new slide, which means a new crook at the end, because these are where the width comes from, and do all this crazy changes to 88, and they're like, you know what, not worth it. And so they went a different route with the Christian Lindbergh valve and all this other stuff. So yes, there are 88Hs out there with Thayer valves, and they're pretty good. They're just pretty rare because they only made a few. And the Thayer valve just doesn't lend itself to the 88 or the 88 feel as much as it does to the 42. So there you go, 42T. Up next is another instrument of mine this time.